Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Tiffany Repeats Herself. No, guys, welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. We are going back to that horrible world known as the JRC, but first, the disclaimers and the trigger warnings. If you're not familiar with the Stop the Shocks campaign or the campaign against the troubled teen industry, all pertinent links are there in the description box. And first off, there's Autistic Hoya's massive archive, which is quite frankly where we literally get 99.9% receipts in regards to the JRC situation. We are talking court documents, ER documents. We are talking quote unquote so called behavioral contracts of all the asinine ideas I've ever heard being floated in regards to mental health or services in regards to people with developmental disabilities. That one ranks up there. We also, of course, have the article in there written by Neuroclastic where they interviewed over 800 ABA professionals in regards to the JRC so-called behavior modification program. And just because I'm feeling feisty today, I'm going to tell you, if you ever hear of something that is referenced as a behavior modification program, please translate that into your brain as attempted brainwashing. Poorly attempted conditioning, brainwashing. Anything that's trying to program you to act in any way that is other than what your nature is. Sorry, not sorry. It is what it is. It is one thing to try to assist someone on how better to have their behaviors. It's another one when you try to script it and then try it through constant repetition to download it into our brains like we are a computer program. Okay? This did get under the JRC's skin so much they threatened Neuroclastic with a defamation lawsuit. But we are a stubborn bunch. We are poor, broke, but stubborn bunch. So, please read the article. The JRC is that concerned under a one article written by a very new non-for-profit. Yeah, there's something in there. They don't want anybody to know. So please read it, circulate it around. Hopefully, if we can ever get it to go viral someday, we can finally get some of these news people who ignore our existence to finally pay attention and have to report something. We got their GoFundMe in there linked too, because unlike the JRC, we do not have access to unlimited influence and power, unlimited money, and unlimited resources. Help if you can. If you can't, please share it. I know Neuroclastic would definitely appreciate it. Now, our trigger warnings go thusly when we discuss places like the Judge Rothberg Educational Center or Agape Boarding School for Boys. You're going to hear vivid descriptions of, catch clips or surveillance footage of people with mental health issues and disabled people being tortured and abused. If you do got young children present, use the headphones. And also, as you know, this channel is marked not for kids for a reason. We do use profanity and speak on dark subjects. If your child is 16 and younger and watching, parental supervision is advised. This channel is run by a very, very extremely amateur person. There are no bells. There are no whistles. I wouldn't know how to edit a single one of these videos in order to make them more appealing to save my soul. I am proficient in doing those sort of things like PowerPoint, all those 90s tools that I got very familiar with. This format, not so much. So, this is going to be a lot more informative than it is entertaining. Unless you like somebody stumbling all over your speech, because if that's the case, take the moment to pause the video and pop some popcorn, because, yeah, we know how that is, in particular when I'm exhausted and overwhelmed. Speaking of, holy crap, could we have a single moment a single goddamn moment of things not going to shit. At all. At all. Is that possible? I thought Trump's last term was bad. The circus has come to town, folks. The circus has come to town. There are moments, like I watched a news conference. He was down in North Carolina. He seemed sane. He was asking actual intelligent questions. Seemed like, okay, maybe it's not as bad as I'm thinking. Maybe I'm thinking out of bias. We're going to abolish FEMA. Son of a bitch. Can I have a single day of sanity, please? I have not had a singular day of sanity in over a decade. A decade. Ever there was a moment in time to go like they used to do in the Middle Ages and leave society behind and find yourself a hut in a deserted area, this time would be it. Those bros might have been onto something. I'm just saying. Just saying is all. And of course, I have to watch it, especially keep a very close eye on it, because I need to know what's going to be going on with the FDA. Every single one of us that has been on the Stop the Shocks campaign have been watching very nervously in regards to what's going to go down with the FDA. Are we even going to be able to enforce the ban again, or are we going to get the rug pulled out from under our feet again and get shoved back to square one? Because I don't trust this current administration with the safety and well-being of a water slug. Okay? And the more erratic things seem, the more nervous we are getting. It's not a fun place to be at, especially having to had taken 4 years to get back to this point again. We're opening up a comment again, obviously, while we're going through this asinine document here. It's not looking good. It's not looking good at all. This is what I get for being an optimistic nihilist. I see things for what they actually are. I hope against hope that I'm wrong, and the very sad fact that it is extremely rare for me to be wrong is getting really cemented now. Alright, enough with the downer news. We're going to move on to our next sentence into the paragraph that we have started the last couple of videos. So, where are we here? Okay. Despite these positive and non-intrusive interventions, however, RM emitted approximately 1,081 self-injurious behaviors and 962 aggressive behaviors over his first 177 days of enrollment at the JRC in 2003 and required frequent mechanical restraint. Jesus fucking Christ. So I'm going to break down again what I broke down yesterday, because obviously these people have no concept under God whatsoever in what the words non-intrusive interventions actually mean. So we're going to skip back a little bit. Okay, differential and primary reinforcement is unintrusive how? Unintrusive how? Explain to me how, if somebody doesn't perform neurotypical mask, and not just any neurotypical mask, but they're fan fictionalized disturbingly Mormon-like version of neurotypical mask correctly. You deprive them things such as bites of food. Explain to me how the hell that's not intrusive. Can you imagine anything more humiliating? That if you don't perform each task like a trained SEAL, that you don't get that bite of food, and your food is probably going to be almost refrigerator level cold by the time that you've done things to their satisfaction. And a lot of times, if you don't, a good majority of it becomes too cold and gets thrown away in front of you. If you don't believe me, folks, Autistic Hoya's Massive Archive, we have earlier videos in reference to that. That is the Food Contingency Program. When you essentially tell someone that you are not being perfect enough in our fan fictionalized version of being neurotypical. So every time you don't perform perfectly, we're going to force you to take a styrofoam cup of a little bit of food, get up in front of classmates and the teacher, where everything stops so everyone could stare at you while they're doing this to you, and you make them throw it away. Are you really going to try to convince anyone that that's non-intrusive? That is a complete eradication of privacy. It's humiliation. It is starvation. It is, you're going to be forced to eat this mush. Oh, you're not going to eat it because it will literally cause you physical pain. Well, since we don't understand sensory issues, we're just going to call that behavior, and we're going to add this in this little notebook. So when we roll you in front of the judge like you are Hannibal Lecter on PCP and acid, they'll know that this is one of the reasons why we need to torture you. Okay? Explain to me. Explain to me how the hell that's supposed to be non-intrusive. Let's go forward, shall we? Extinction. You remember extinction, right? That's when they start removing things that you already own, and you have to earn them back. Also known as shit that never happens to neurotypical teenagers, no matter how batshit insane they act or how reckless and life-threatening some of their activities are. Throwing away things or forcing us to go without things or intruding on our fucking sleep. And you are legitimately going to say that that is non-intrusive? Token fines. Of all the stupid things on planet Earth, number one is the JRC's playroom. Okay? Not all of these kids are in elementary school. By the time we've hit teenage years, as much as we may still love pizza, we love pizza a lot more when we're at home video gaming. Having a pizza party in school kind of loses its luster after you hit a certain age, and at some point literally does just become condescending as hell. Okay? Let's but or you'll lose time in the ball pit. Your oldest person you keep there is 55 fucking years old. Do you really think that it is motivating to remove tokens so they don't get time in the ball pit when they're well into middle age? But what's intrusive about that? Are you smoking crack? Are you smoking crack? A verbal no and redirection. Your verbal no is literally no. When they protest, it's no speaking out. What about when they ask to go to the bathroom and you ignore them and they keep asking and you see that as an offense because they're nagging you? But then, because you continue to do that, they have an accident. Well, obviously, that's a behavior, and we're going to consequent that. And we are not going to consider this non intrusive. Really? Let's continue. Behavior contracts. If we've looked over Jennifer Masumber's behavioral contract, but for those of us who are a little bit fuzzy on it, we're going to go ahead and pull it up again to see just how wonderfully non-intrusive it is. Shall we? Shall we fucking just? I am not here to play today. Oh, for God's sake, hold on, folks. Here we are. You guys remember this? We did videos on it. Let's see how non-intrusive this is, shall we? OOS. Out of seat. One shock. Sensory assault meant lose points to get a reward like you're 5. HDB, health dangerous behaviors, urination or defecation, manipulative, destructive, or inappropriate speech. I was raised by Army veterans, grandpas who are Army veterans, and a truck driver, starting with the truck driver who's also a veteran at the age of 6. Considering not just how batshit insane and inhumane and monstrous it is, the level of stupidity alone would have me cursing at a rate that would actually probably impress a drill sergeant. I am not kidding. I would never have left the 4-point board. That's where I would probably live and die. Non-compliance and manipulation unclear. Okay, so this is what's considered an aggression. Non-intrusive. OOS without permission. Out of bed without permission. So, like, if you wake up in the morning and get up out of your bed and you were not verbally given permission, and we're going to call that non-intrusive. Again, I ask you, are you smoking crack? Let's see here. Destroy, property destruction, attempts and threats, verbal or written, to bang objects, kick objects, throw objects, slam doors, touch electrical outlets without permission. So, are they not even allowed to do so much as flip a light switch without permission? Oh, but that's non-intrusive, though. Yell, scream, or still, to include food. So if you are starving to death because they made you throw all the edible food, they made you wear in a belt all day, which just screams multiple issues health-wise to go horribly wrong, by the way. And we all know, because I've told you all, I would allow myself to starve and die before I would eat their protein mash with liver powder. And I know for a fact that JRC goddamn well knows it. Okay? Is that non intrusive, JRC? Yeah? We have ritualistic behaviors, hesitating before passing through doorways, repetitive tapping of objects, having to touch something with both hands. In other words, if you stim in any way, shape, or manner in a way that cannot be concealed away from their psychotic eyes, well, you deserve to be consequented for that, according to them. Somehow, this is not intrusive enough, according to them. Are you all seeing this here? We're not going to go through the whole thing. Obviously, somewhere within the myriad of videos on this topic, you should find the one there where we go through all of this very thoroughly. I bring it up briefly to prove a point. Those behavioral contracts are not even remotely to be considered non-intrusive by anyone who's ever worked this field who's fucking sane. Everything they do is intrusive. These kids are given no privacy. None. You want to know what's non-intrusive JRC tactics? Would you like to know? Within my person-centered planning program, there was not any of this, well, consequences nonsense. Okay? Non-intrusive would mean, for example, if I was trying to perform a life skill, and the way I was doing so, for example, in preparation of fish when I was extremely new to it, and well, what would they do? Obviously, that was a behavior. No jackass that is called. I was very young and did not understand certain things in regards to health and the proper cooking of fish because I was 19 goddamn years old. And up until that time, though I did know how to cook, it was primarily with beef because I live in the southwest portion of the United States. Okay? Not everything has to deal with the chism. Okay? So, what did my community integrator, who was first helping me at the very beginning in my assisted living apartment, do? Do you think that, well, your behavioral contract said because you cursed and screamed because something was going wrong with the fish that you were trying to make, that obviously you deserve to be shocked or have some form of consequences? I'm going to invade your space. I'm going to turn off your oven. I'm going to take this fresh, still very good and still very viable fish that was not cheap, and I'm going to throw it in the trash can in front of you and then tell you, because of your actions, that you're not allowed to eat that night. That's the behavioral contracts, folks. Anyone thinks that is a so-called non-intrusive method, I really do need them to put down the crack pipe, and I'm going to start questioning whether that crack pipe has also been laced with LSD. Because none of that, literally none of that, could be labeled by any sane human being as non-intrusive. Especially not somebody like me. When it comes to my spaces, I can be downright goddamn predatory when it comes to protecting my space. Okay? Which, let's face it, having PTSD, having gone through abuse, and the things that I did for so long and not having my own space for so long, that's kind of understandable, right? Any community integrator that I worked with, had they tried anything in regards to like the consequences to those behavioral contracts, would have ended their shift inside a hospital ER room. That is not me embellishing. That is a fact, especially during that age. Okay? Let's move on, shall we? Manipulations of environments and demands. Again, I am downright predatory when it comes to protecting my space. If anyone so much as touches a single thing in my environment, particularly when I'm agitated like right now, and does anything with any of my things that I did not condone or ask them to do, it's not gonna end well. It is not going to end well at all. If you try to modify my environment in any way without my consent, even now that I'm 40, there is going to be some hell to pay. I am not mincing words here. There will be hell to pay. Full stop. Now, weirdly enough, although that's very autistic like, but my brother, and I know he's been tested, who's not neurodivergent or autistic, I would say he does qualify for some strong shadow syndrome. And my mom are the exact same way. The exact same way. Well, we manipulated their environment without their consent, without telling them it was going to happen, and it didn't change their aggressive behaviors. To this, I ask the JRC staff. Say you go home after a long day at the JRC. You are overexhausted with a long day of torturing other people. You come home to your nice house or your nice little apartment, and you open the door, and everything has been completely rearranged in a way that you don't even recognize. Somebody has repainted your walls in, like, I don't know, we'll just say fluorescent neon pink. They have replaced all your furniture with kids-side sitting beanbags. And all your tables, your lamps, and everything's it's now milk crates and Dollar Tree paper lanterns. How are you going to react to that? That somebody came and invaded your personal space without your permission and arranged your entire environment in a way that you never gave permission for. Because if you're going to sit there and tell me that you wouldn't get angry and have quote unquote aggressive behavior, you're full of shit or you're high as fuck. Okay? Okay? You see, that's not a tism thing. That's a I'm a human being thing. Okay? Which, contrary to popular belief, yes, we're still human beings. We're just more logical than you people. And for whatever reasons we can't comprehend, that somehow scares you all to death. Alright, let's continue. Reward systems and loss of privileges. Now, the most popular style of raising kids when I was a kid was corporal punishment and allowance. Allowance, when you followed the house rules, did everything you were supposed to. Corporal punishment, when you did things, when you went off and been stupid, or in a house of military vets decided mouthing off was a good idea that day. From all we know about my particular generation, in our brain dead extreme stunts in particular, we are talking about a generation of folks who are coming into adulthood while the most popular show was Jackass. Okay? So, with that in mind, allowance, corporal punishment. Do you really think that changed any of our quote unquote self injurious behavior or aggressive behavior? I have a pretty good memory of those times. Sometimes miss it quite a bit, not gonna lie. It's back when we weren't afraid of literally everything. But I can tell you with decent authority that the method of corporal punishment and allowance did not curb our reckless, life threatening, daredevil nonsense one bit. And it can and has been argued in the past that we could say that it actually just made it worse because we've become more actually challenge ourselves to be even more reckless as an act of rebellion and defiance. Hence why you had so many kids back then that before they left school had at least one or two broken bones. I was actually considered weird for never had been rushed to an ER for a broken bone. If that tells you anything. It's not less intrusive, it's manipulation, and quite clearly doesn't really work. So please spare me. For the love of God, spare me. But loss of privileges. You gonna sit there and tell me loss of privileges is not intrusive? Okay, that would be for an example. If I had to go out today and do a workshop, and as I call it for you guys, I had to go play the doll for a little bit. But after a successful workshop, I get detained. And it goes past the little structure I've built up where I can do about 1 to 2 additional hours before I start getting jittery. And it's now coming up on hour 3 after the presentation. And there is no way to escape to a room where I'm not surrounded by people. In a situation where I did not prep myself for that. There are situations, as long as I know well advance, I can prep myself for the fact that I'm going to be in there than more than 3 hours. When I'm not prepped for it is usually right after a presentation where I at least have a moment to go into the hotel room and just have a nice solid hour of silence and no people so I could, come back to myself and then go out as the doll again later. Right? Okay. And then, just out of sheer exhaustion, the presentation and the stress of it, and the fact that I've been forced to people and therefore forced to mask, forced to pretend to be interested in small talk, and a whole slew of other things that I'd rather gag than actually willingly engage in if I'm on my own time, that is. The mask slips, right? The mask slips. I'm exhausted. I need to get away from people now. But things are going to start a little bit either shutdowny or meltdowny. Or the overwhelming exhaustion happens and I start stumbling over my words. Okay? And because of this, if it were a place like the JRC, because that would be a behavior, they would do something like remove my TV. Or even worse, and I do mean the level of aggressive behavior this would provoke would. There's a lot of hardened violent criminals that would be scarred for life. Let's put it that way. And the consequence would be that they removed every single book of mine out of there and would not give it back. Because I got exhausted and couldn't continue to mask. You're taking my personal things that I need, that I use, that I've been encouraged with therapy to use as self-coping mechanisms and self-calming items, if you as it were. And because I couldn't mask long enough, you're going to remove the items that I use to help put the mask back on. Remove my own personal things, and we're going to call that non-intrusive. You see, the JRC does not really have an understanding in regards to what non-intrusive types of things like this. They don't know what non-intrusive actually means. To them, non-intrusive means I did not physically assault you or inflict violence on your person. That's what they mean by non-intrusive. If we live in reality, we understand that anytime we violate another person's space, anytime we mess with their personal belongings and things, anytime we deliberately screw around with and mess with their sleep patterns, every time we deliberately throw someone like me who needs routine to be able to function, and we throw a monkey wrench in it, and then because you get scatterbrained, we're going to go ahead and consequent you. All of these things are actually intrusive as hell. Because we are not giving you permission to do these things. We are especially not giving you permission to remove the things from us that we use to maintain or gain back our calm so that we don't have the behaviors you are constantly accusing us of. Okay? The JRC has no concept of what positive behavioral supports actually mean, as they tend to try and define it as an actual treatment program in and of itself when it's actually an umbrella term. They have freely admitted in the past, in court documents no less, that they didn't even know what positive behavioral reinforcement actually was, let alone did they have any way in their own statement to actually use it within their programs. We know that. They put all of these up here, but these are the positive interventions and none of them worked. So These are not positive interventions. These are not non-intrusive interventions. They are extremely intrusive. If you enter into my space without my permission, intrusive. If you rearrange the environment I am in, and particularly if it's my room, like it is with the JRC, that is intrusive. If you're trying to throw me into a ball pit when I am middle aged, that may not be necessarily intrusive, but for God's sake, what in the name of God is fucking wrong with you? Verbal no and redirection, when done properly, within an actual treatment program that makes sense, especially after having someone previously show when being redirected, the best thing would to be to do in that situation is fine. The way the JRC does it, on the other hand, yeah, yeah, that is not, you cannot, in the name of God, try to tell me that those are positive behavioral supports, not someone that has been in this field and a volunteering, a consulting, as well as being a professional in the field for over 20 years. You cannot list those things to me and then try to tell me that those belong under the positive behavioral supports umbrella as treatment programs. You are full of shit. Full of shit. Okay? Every single last thing we went over intrusive except one. And that one's just insulting. Okay? None of these are a part of official program that is underneath the positive behavioral support umbrella. Not a single one. You want to know what umbrella they do fall under? Applied behavioral analysis. And contrary to popular belief, positive behavioral supports and the different interventions and programs that fall underneath it, and applied behavioral analysis are not the same animal at all. Sometimes they can be used within connection to each other, but they're not the same things. Okay? None of the things that they listed are underneath positive behavioral support umbrella at all. It is all basic, the psychological mind fuckery and abuse of applied behavioral analysis. And in case anyone's wondering, how's that intrusive? I encourage you to pick up a book and read on the so-called kinder, gentler ABA. Not from the perspective of what the media paints it to be, but I want you to read it as though you were getting ready to go into the program yourself, and this is the type of treatment plan they were going to put you on. Don't take my word for it. Take a look at it. We're going to go ahead and close on that one, folks. We don't get very many views on this channel, and the few we do tend to get removed from time to time, so please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and please don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time this afternoon, and as always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea absolutely do hope you have a good one. I'll see you all in a minute. Bye-bye, everyone.